Welcome to today's episode where we're diving deep into Ryan Holiday's transformative work, The Obstacle is the Way. This book takes us on a journey through one of history's most enduring philosophical frameworks and shows us how to apply it to our modern lives in surprisingly practical ways. Have you ever found yourself staring at a seemingly insurmountable problem, feeling completely stuck? We all have. But what if I told you that the very obstacle blocking your path might actually be the path itself? That's the central premise of Holiday's book, deeply rooted in the ancient philosophy of Stoicism. The title comes from a quote by the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." It's a powerful idea that has guided some of history's greatest figures through their darkest hours. And today, we're going to unpack how this wisdom can transform your approach to life's inevitable challenges. Part 1. Perception. How we see our problems. Let's start with a question. Have you ever noticed how the same exact challenge can completely derail one person yet become a springboard for another? The difference isn't in the obstacle itself, but in how we perceive it. Holiday argues that our perception is the first crucial element in turning obstacles into opportunities. When we face difficulties, most of us react emotionally, with fear, frustration, confusion, or panic. These emotions cloud our judgment and limit our ability to see clearly. Think about it like this. Imagine you're driving through a massive thunderstorm. If you panic, grip the wheel with white knuckles, and focus only on the terrifying lightning strikes, you're more likely to crash. But if you can remain calm, maintain perspective, and focus on the road ahead, you dramatically increase your chances of navigating safely. The same applies to life's storms. Holiday shows us how to develop what he calls an immunization to panic. The ability to stay objective when everyone else is losing their heads. One technique he suggests is the practice of contemptuous expressions, where you strip away the drama and see things for what they actually are. For example, instead of thinking, "This is a catastrophic business failure that will ruin me," you might reframe it as, "A business venture didn't work out as planned, creating an opportunity to try a different approach." It's like when my coffee maker broke this morning. Instead of viewing it as the universe conspiring against my caffeine needs, I could see it more objectively as heated water failed to pass through ground beans. Suddenly, it's just a mechanical problem with multiple solutions, not an existential crisis. Holiday emphasizes that perception has 3 critical steps. 1. Be objective and control your emotions. 2. Direct your energy toward what you can control. 3. Look for the opportunity within every obstacle. He illustrates this with countless historical examples, from Thomas Edison's remarkably calm response when his laboratory burned down, "We just got rid of a lot of rubbish," to cancer survivors who found greater meaning and purpose through their illness. Part 2. Action. Breaking down obstacles. Once we've adjusted our perception, it's time to act. But not just any action. Deliberate, creative, and persistent action. Holiday introduces us to what the Stoics called the art of acquiescence. Not in the sense of giving up, but of acknowledging reality as it is before attempting to change it. It's about working with obstacles rather than fighting against them. There's a wonderful story Holiday tells about Demosthenes, the great Greek orator. Born with a severe speech impediment, Demosthenes didn't just accept his limitation or rail against fate. Instead, he methodically addressed his weakness by filling his mouth with pebbles and practicing speeches, running up hills while reciting verses, and building an underground study where he could practice oratory for months without distraction. He didn't just overcome his obstacle, he used it to become one of history's greatest speakers. It's like when I discovered I was terrible at public speaking. Instead of avoiding it forever, which was my initial plan, I'll admit, I forced myself to volunteer for every presentation opportunity at work for a year. Was it uncomfortable? Absolutely. Did I sweat through several perfectly good shirts? You bet. But that deliberate discomfort transformed my weakness into a strength. Holiday emphasizes several action principles. Start where you are, take it step by step, practice persistence, iterate and experiment. Follow the process, not the prize. Use obstacles against themselves. He reminds us that action isn't about having all the answers or waiting until conditions are perfect. It's about moving forward incrementally, learning as you go, and adjusting course as needed. I love his example of Ulysses S. Grant, who succeeded not because he was the most brilliant strategist, but because he kept moving forward while others became paralyzed by obstacles. When his supply lines were cut, instead of waiting for reinforcements like conventional wisdom dictated, Grant had his army live off the land, turning a potential disaster into a strategic advantage by making his forces more mobile and less dependent. Part 3. Will. The discipline of the heart and mind. The final component of Holiday's framework is will, that internal fortress that allows us to endure when things get tough. Will isn't about brute force, it's about resilience, acceptance, and finding meaning in our struggles. Holiday explains that true will has several dimensions. 1. Acceptance of what we cannot change. 2. Love for everything that happens, what the Stoics called amor fati. 3. Perseverance through repeated setbacks. 4. Something greater than ourselves to fight for. 5. Preparation for future obstacles. 6. The recognition of our own mortality as motivation. I find his discussion of amor fati, the love of fate, particularly powerful. It's not just accepting what happens to us, but embracing it. German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche described it as not merely bearing what is necessary, but love it. Think about that for a moment. What would change in your life if you could not only accept your challenges, but actually love them for what they might create in you? Holiday illustrates this concept through the story of Thomas Edison again. When his factory burned down at age 67, destroying years of work and research, Edison's response was remarkable. He told his son, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." The next morning, surveying the ruins, Edison said, "There is great value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start anew." Within weeks, Edison had borrowed money, rebuilt his operation, and his company was back to manufacturing at an even higher capacity than before. Most of us can barely handle our internet going down for an hour without questioning the fundamental fairness of the universe. Edison lost millions in today's dollars and decades of work, and saw it as an opportunity to start fresh. The difference is in developing what Holiday calls the discipline of will. Training ourselves to endure, to find meaning in difficulty, and to use every experience as fuel for growth. Practical applications. Turning philosophy into practice. What makes this book particularly valuable is Holiday's emphasis on practical application. This isn't just philosophy to be contemplated, it's philosophy to be lived. For example, Holiday suggests techniques like the premeditation of evils, mentally rehearsing potential obstacles before they happen so you're prepared rather than surprised, the discipline of ascent, pausing before reacting emotionally to distinguish between what happened and your interpretation of what happened. Finding the directing mind. Recognizing that you always have control over your own thoughts and actions, even when external events are beyond your control. I've found the premeditation of evils particularly helpful in my own life. Before important presentations or difficult conversations, I'll deliberately imagine everything that could go wrong, not to increase anxiety, but to prepare responses in advance. What if my slides don't work? What if I'm asked a question I can't answer? What if half the audience leaves midway through? By mentally rehearsing these scenarios, I've found I'm much calmer when actual problems arise. Ah, yes, I think. I expected something like this might happen, rather than being thrown into panic mode. The Stoic Framework in Action. Throughout the book, Holiday weaves together three core Stoic disciplines: perception, action, and will, into a comprehensive approach for handling life's obstacles. When facing any challenge, we can use this framework by asking, 1. How can I perceive this situation differently? 2. What deliberate action can I take with what's in my control? 3. How can I cultivate the will to persist and find meaning? Holiday shows how this framework has been used by leaders like Abraham Lincoln, who suffered from lifelong depression, yet used it as a source of empathy and wisdom. Innovators like Steve Jobs, who turned his firing from Apple into the opportunity that eventually led to his triumphant return. And artists like Shakespeare, who produced some of his greatest works during plague outbreaks when theaters were closed. Conclusion: the obstacle becomes the way. As we wrap up our exploration of Holiday's work, I want to emphasize one of his most powerful insights. Our obstacles are not simply overcome, they become the very source of our growth and advancement. Think of it like resistance training. When you lift weights, the resistance isn't your enemy. It's the very thing creating your strength. Without that opposition, no growth occurs. In life, too, the resistance we face, those obstacles we curse and rail against, may be the exact forces developing our greatest capabilities. Holiday concludes his book with this thought: the obstacle in the path becomes the path. Never forget, within every obstacle is an opportunity to improve our condition. Whether you're facing professional setbacks, personal challenges, health issues, or relationship difficulties, the timeless wisdom in "the obstacle is the way" offers a powerful framework for not just enduring life's challenges, but using them as stepping stones to becoming more resilient, creative, and purposeful. As Marcus Aurelius wrote nearly 2,000 years ago, the mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Ryan Holiday's modern take on ancient Stoic wisdom. Until next time, remember, that thing that seems to be blocking your path, it might just be showing you the way forward.